Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to Let's Learn the Electric Bass with Lyte. Today, I'm going to get rid of these old rusty strings that are sounding a little dead, replace them with some new ones. And we'll talk about strings, how they work, the different types. But first, you need to know what you need to have. Sure, you need a new set of strings. They come in lots of types and gauges and whatnot, but you also need a set of pliers that have a little snippy bit right here. Snip, snip. Because we're going to twist the end after we snip the end. Even if you don't cut your strings off of the bass itself, you still do need to trim the ends. So you need something that is able to crimp the end after you snip the end. You might be able to get away with tin snips, but I'm not entirely certain. Now, when you're going to replace your strings, you have two main options. Do it one at a time or do them all at once. The only reason to do them all at once is if you're going to clean the neck of your guitar or bass or whatever. If you're not cleaning your neck, do them one at a time, because this entire thing is under tension due to the twisting up here. And so if you take them all off, all that tension goes away, and you might end up having some bending in the neck, and things could go wrong, and then you might need to adjust the truss bar. It's just a whole lot of drama that you really don't need. So you want to do them one at a time. Generally, you want to start with one of the middle two. And this video is going to be very similar to every how to restring your bass video, because the process is more or less the same. But I do want to talk about the types of strings and what leads to them being different. So while I unwind and remove one of these strings, we're going to talk about what the types of strings are and how strings work. So these strings are round wound strings. They have a central core wrapped with nice round wires. It's very difficult to show that to you because if I bring this up to the camera, it just will not focus. But the round winding makes noise. So you know that fret noise? You get that because it is round wound. The flat round strings, instead of being nice and round all the way through, are flattened down. Now, those strings are easier on your fingers because it's actually the round winding that causes the blisters and whatnot. But they have a very dark foomp sort of tone. And a lot of people tend not to enjoy that because it doesn't cut through. It makes it harder for you to be heard. What we're actually going to be putting on this bass are tape wound strings. And yes, they are bright green for maximum visibility. Tape wound strings are actually round wound strings that have a layer of tape on them. Now, this leads us to an interesting question. They're labeled 4th string through 1st string. Is the first one the high one or the low one? All you have to do is open them up and take a quick look at giant string versus tiny string. Well, tiny string. And you know what's going on. So we took off the 3rd string. So we grab the 3rd string bag, grab ourselves our 3rd string. Now, despite these being tape wound, and I was expecting them to be perfectly flat, they still have a little bit of a ridge to them. But the internet has told me that you should be able to play all day with these without them causing serious wear and tear to your fingers, which sounds great to me. And I've also been told that they're good when you want a jazz sound. And that is very much the sound that I enjoy. Now, if you look up here, that's how much extra string we've got. And that's just too much string. So we look at where it's going to go into the peg. And we add, let's see, 3, maybe 4 inches for the winding. And we take our snippers, snip, snip. And we snip. And now we've got a little extra piece of string. So then you take the end and you actually put it into the peg because there is a little hollow there at the bottom. But first, remember what I said about crimping? We take the end and we twist it ever so slightly. Remember what I said about there being a core and then it wound? Well, sometimes that core decides it does not want to be in the string anymore. And actually, we need to get this all the way down. Such that it fits in the tuning peg. There we go. Now, this bass has out the back strings, not through the body. It's possible that yours needs to go through the body up onto the saddle and on. Mine catches on the back. Now, when working with actually getting it wound, you take it out the far end and in towards the first string. It's important that they go the same way, well, at least the correct way, and then you start taking the tuning peg and twisting it. Now you want to keep your string at the bottom of the peg while you do this, because you always want the string to be at the bottom when it's finished, such that you get a good angle against the nut. If you don't get a good angle against the nut, it will cause weird buzzy noises when you play the open string, kind of like if you don't press a fret hard enough. Well, the same thing happens if it doesn't press against the nut hard enough. Now, I may have left a little bit too much spare string because this is taking a while to get all wound up, but I have faith that it's going to work. Because you don't want too much winding, because then it could slip and the tuning will wander off. Yeah, I definitely left too much on there. But it'll be okay. Oh, wait. No, I didn't. The other end fell off. So what we do, we dial it back. There we go. Now we keep that in there, cinch it back up. because this right here should have a relatively downward angle towards the nut, or from the nut towards the peg. Okay, now we're firmly attached down here. We're nice and wound here. That's probably not bad that it has this much string to it. Okay, it's looking good. And then we tighten this up, and that raises the pitch. So now we get to start talking about strings and their properties. So why do you have strings of different pitches that are the same length? Because we always work with the length of the string when adjusting the pitch. Well, strings of different mass vibrate at different speeds. So the more massive it is, the slower it's able to move, and thus the lower pitch, hence the largest string being the lowest string. And then we tune it like we would tune normally. Okay, so we have attached a string right up here at the tuning peg. It's in the peg such that we don't have to worry about it. You'll notice that I've got the pegs, the tuning part on the top and the bottom. So these two actually come up towards the middle with the string positioning. There are bases that you get all 4 pegs along here, and then these bottom 2 would be on top, or would be on the bottom along with these guys, but they would have an extra little string thing, I'm not sure what to call it, here that will keep them low enough to get a good angle against the nut. Now, we are not done with this string yet, because sure, it's in tune with our bottom string now, but new strings are incredibly stretchy. And so you want to take them and stretch it out a bit, such that your tuning doesn't wander off as you're playing. Now, I don't really know the best way to get this done. I don't know all the details of what you need to protect against, but you don't want it to jump off of the bridge. You don't want to pop it off the nut. But I know that you do it until it no longer drops in pitch when you stretch it. So stretch, 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 stretch. So the size, like the gauge of any particular string, has an impact on its pitch, its tone. I think we're good to go. The winding of it changes the overtones that it likes to produce. These round wound, given they have very small things that can vibrate in a particular way, and they have a small place to catch your fingers, gives it a lot more of the higher overtones, whereas the round wound, not the round wound, the flat wound, tend to stick more towards the fundamental. So we've done one string, you get it in here, we get it up here, we do the stretching, we make sure it's nice and clean on this nut, and then I don't have to worry about the angle in the saddle because there is nowhere for it to go. If you had through the back strings, then you would likely be able to adjust the angle after it reaches the saddle here. such that it's nice and sharp, such that you never get a buzz when playing the open string. For me, I don't have to worry about it. In the nut, there are grooves in which the string resides. Make sure it's in there and it stays in there. So that's how you do the initial restringing. I'm going to go and restring all the rest of these, and I'll be back when they're all done so you can hear how it sounds with these shiny new strings. And we're back with very green strings. Granted, they're not super green in this light, but they're very green in person. If you put these things under a black light, they're obnoxiously green, and I love it. And oh, do they sound so nice. They've got significantly more punch than my old strings. They get a nice clear tone. There's still a little bit of fret noise. Even with the tape wound, you get a little bit of that fret noise, which I don't mind one bit. Sounds so nice, gets really good response. And this is what I mean when I say a lot of the tone is you, so long as your instrument is in correct working order. Rusty, old, corroded strings are not good working order. So now that I've got good functional strings, I can work on actually getting the tone that I want rather than the tone that the strings will let me have, because I could go for a super round, warm tone. You'll notice that I'm plucking a little bit with my thumb. It's not against the rules. So long as it gives you the tone that you want and the facility to do what you need. Or we could go total fingertip. Pinky getting out there. So, all in all, I'd say this one's a victory. Got good sounding, good looking strings, feel pretty nice. They're not silk on your fingers, though. You still can't play forever with these guys until you're a legitimate bass player. And then they're probably much nicer on your fingers than other strings. I'm not sure how I feel about this E string, though. The other three feel real nice. They sound really nice. The E string, it's going to take some getting used to. otherwise, I'd say it's a vast improvement. And so, just need to play on them, get used to them, see how they really work. But that's how you replace strings. That's a lot about strings. I don't remember if I talked about tension being the other factor in pitch. It's the mass and the tension that gets the job done, because the mass slows it down or speeds it up, depending on if you're going larger or smaller. And then tension, the higher tension that it's under, the faster it will vibrate. The faster it vibrates, the higher the frequency, the higher the frequency, the higher the pitch. So when you turn these knobs to make the strings more tense, it brings the pitch up. You loosen them up and make it less tense, the pitch goes down, because this string can play this note. It's just not very well designed for it, and so you leave it at the note that it's meant for. And so that's how you replace strings. That's what strings are about. Round, wound, flat wound, tape wound. These are, in fact, tape wound. You got 4, 3, 2, 1. Mass and tension lead to the pitch. Next episode, I think we might actually bring in some chord changes from an actual tune and see what we can do with our perfect fifths. And so, I will see you in the next episode of Let's Learn the Electric Bass with Lyte.